Hello, and welcome to today's Campus Grand Rounds, a day in the life of a water quality expert. My name is Nicole Dutra. I'm a senior project coordinator for the National Environmental Health Association, and I will be your moderator today. Allow me to quickly review the agenda for today's Campus Grand Rounds. To begin, I will review the learning objectives for today's seminar. I will provide a few brief announcements. I will introduce our expert speaker who has a great presentation planned for all of you today. And we'll hold a short Q&A session after the speaker's presentation for any questions. Then I will introduce our panelists who are going to share with all of you a day in their life working in water quality. Following that, we will hold the main discussion and Q&A session. And lastly, NEHA's Adrian Gothard will address all students with an opportunity. Then I will close out today's seminar with some final announcements. Excuse me. After attending this seminar, you should be able to explain the various roles and responsibilities of an environmental public health water quality specialist, compare and contrast the responsibilities, challenges, and rewards of working in water quality, and assess whether a career in water quality aligns with your personal interests, skills, and professional goals. With that, allow me to cover a few housekeeping items before we get started. Please note the seminar is being recorded. The recording will be uploaded onto NEHA's Environmental Public Health Campus Grand Rounds webpage. You can also find the recordings for all of our previous seminars here as well. We will drop the link for you in the chat in just a moment. Please use the Q&A option to submit any questions for our speaker and our panelists. You should see the Q&A option on your Zoom screen. At the conclusion of the seminar, you will receive a link to take part in an evaluation survey to provide your feedback and comments on today's seminar. Now, for all of those here who may not be familiar with NEHA, allow me to provide a brief overview of who we are. As an association, everything we do is to build, sustain, and empower the environmental public health workforce so they are equipped and prepared to protect the health of communities across the country. NEHA supports the environmental public health workforce by striving to provide the most up-to-date trainings, tools, and resources across the many fields considered environmental public health. NEHA supports building workforce capacity, efficiency, and effectiveness by focusing on increasing knowledge, skills, and competencies across all environmental public health fields. We also have a long-standing history in credentialing. For example, we have our Registered Environmental Health Specialist, or REHS credential, and our Certified Professional Food Safety, or CPFS credential, and there are more. Our credentials are evidenced through testing and maintained through continuing education. So if you're not already a member, you should join us today. We'll drop a link for membership in the chat in just a moment. In addition, we host an annual educational conference and exhibition, which includes hundreds of sessions focused on all the different fields of environmental public health, like food safety, private water, on-site wastewater, vectors, climate, air quality, emergency preparedness, body art, and so many more. This year, we're hosting our AEC in Phoenix, Arizona, July 14th through the 17th, and this year's conference promises to be your oasis in the desert. Registration is currently open. Full conference rates include tickets for our exhibition grand opening and our networking event. So now, without further delay, allow me to introduce our guest speaker. Chris Manley. So after receiving his bachelor's degree in environmental health from Colorado State University, Chris worked in local public health for several agencies in Colorado for over 20 years before joining the Northern Water Conservancy District in 2024. His past work experience has been across all programs in environmental health, but with a focus throughout on water quality. completing inspections, developing regulations, and ensuring compliance with water quality standards, along with disaster response and recovery from several major floods and fires in northern Colorado. So, Chris, I will pass the floor over to you. I'll stop sharing my screen and you may share yours.
Let's pull it up. All right. How does that look?
Perfect. You're
All
there.
right. Well, thanks for the opportunity to talk about water quality and environmental health and share a little bit about my career. My name is Chris Manley. I'm a senior water quality policy specialist at the Northern Colorado Water Conservancy District. We're a water district that serves over 1 million people in northeastern Colorado. We've got 12 reservoirs we manage, a couple more under construction right now, and including all the necessary piping and plumbing to move water across our area. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my experience with water quality and environmental health and kind of how I got here. So just as quick background, when you think about water quality and environmental health, there's really a few main areas that we focus on primarily. The first one's protecting water supplies for use as drinking water and ensuring adequate treatment. And really, this ranges all the way from really large, complex water treatment plants that could treat millions of gallons per day and have multiple facilities all across a town, or could be an individual well and working with just one homeowner to ensure their water's safe. But environmental health professionals are really heavily involved in education, inspection, compliance of each of those situations, making sure standards are met. And as you can imagine, there's a wide range of experience and knowledge across those two different types of situations. So it's kind of unique to environmental health, I think, that we get to operate across that entire range. Second is water quality when it comes to recreational uses. It could be anything from designing or reviewing plans of a new swimming pool, could be investigating illnesses at a swim beach or potential sources of contamination at a fishery. And then third, source water protection really encompasses the first two, plus it's things like emergency responses to spills, emergencies that threaten water quality, designing and installing septic systems to prevent contamination, evaluating impacts of large wastewater treatment facilities, anything that threatens water from being able to be used for one of those first two purposes I already mentioned. So a little about me and how I ended up working in water quality. I got my start in environmental health at Colorado State University. I would definitely say I kind of stumbled into environmental health. I didn't really know what environmental health was or what someone who worked in environmental health would do until my first course at CSU, but pretty quickly, early on, I knew this was something for me and something that I could see myself doing. I initially thought I was going to work in somewhere in design and construction of water treatment facilities. And when I kind of ran into environmental health, I realized it's a little of that, but it's also got a whole lot more to it. And it's got this community connection and need to solve problems that I didn't see in just design or engineering side. And the problem solving side of environmental health and water quality in particular really appealed to me. So after I got my environmental health degree at CSU, I went straight into working at local public health, couple different agencies across Colorado. One of the things that was great about entering the workforce with an environmental health degree was those agencies were really looking for that background. And so I was immediately able to take what I'd learned in the class and use it real world in the workplace. So across working at local public health agencies, I worked a little bit in all of the core environmental health programs. I did a lot of work in retail food, a lot of work in air quality, communicable disease, zoonotic disease, solid and hazardous waste. But what I found was that the issues you encounter in water quality were often the really complex issues and the ones that I found most rewarding. So I got the opportunity after a few years at local public health to exclusively work in water quality, and that was really my passion. Water quality is something where the issues they tend to be those type of things that you get called about on a weekend. Somebody's in a panic because something's going on with the water system, or there's a big sewer leak, or seeing something in a river. So it's those exciting, complex issues that really has drawn me to it. But I spent most of my career in local public health, and just recently I made a switch to the water district, and it's been really interesting seeing how much environmental health influences everything we do, even here at the water district, and how that local public health knowledge has translated. So I'm a policy specialist, and you see this, you're seeing this job title more and more, but what is a policy specialist? What is it? What does somebody in this role do? Really, you're taking the technical pieces of something like water quality, of that program, and you're figuring out how those apply to policies or standards. It really takes a good base of understanding of the topic, and to be able to take a proposed new regulation or rule, or a policy, and determine how it might apply to daily operations or long-term compliance. So, when I look at something like PFAS contamination, which I'll talk a little bit about more later, a policy specialist, you're really trying to find the way to implement policies or regulations into the daily activity. So in my current role, it might be identifying where PFAS contamination could be entering our water supply. We're looking at things like industrial activity, but also runoff from farms that might be using PFAS containing pesticides. It could be materials used to build facilities and transport the water. So analyzing those risks to the system, determining how policies might apply, really that's kind of the core work of a policy specialist. So I'm going to switch now really quick to highlighting some of the emerging topics in water quality. Water quality feels like it changes about every 6 months. There's a new focus, and I'll detail a little bit of that here, but it's true. It really changes rapidly. The field changes rapidly. It's a really exciting area to work in. But these three, emerging contaminants, climate change, and the future of water resources, they're really linked together, and you're starting to see where the influence of one is pushing things in the other into a whole new range of problems. So to just talk about a couple of these in more detail, emerging contaminants. This slide here with some pictures of pretty everyday items. What do all these have in common? And these are somewhat new potential sources of PFAS. And it feels like just about every week we learn about new products or new sources that are using PFAS or that could contain PFAS. So it's not just looking at industrial manufacturing sites or big hazardous waste spills anymore. All these items could be contributing in different ways. And so it could be looking at a landfill and the impacts of just consumer products, and where those PFAS might be going. Or something here in Colorado that has come to light recently is what impact could PFAS used in ski wax and ending up in the snow have in our watersheds. So really interesting area and one of those emerging spots. And then somewhat even newer than PFAS is 6-PPD. This has recently hit the news in the last year or so, I'd say, and it's compound that's isolated from tires and the particles they leave on the roadway. We know it's extremely toxic to fish and can be for certain species, but from an environmental health perspective, we're thinking about where else is this water going? Can the drinking water plant effectively remove it? Is it harmful for people that might be swimming in the water? And what if you eat fish that are contaminated with 6 ppd? So it, when these emerging contaminants come to light, it really creates a lot of questions and a kind of a cascading series of issues for an environmental health professional. Climate and natural disasters. The impact of climate change means we're seeing bigger and more destructive disasters. And while you might not immediately think of water quality, if a flood or a fire is occurring, it's usually not long after that environmental health professionals are called on to start dealing with some of the aftermath. So this is a photo of a flood that occurred here in northern Colorado about 10 years ago. And in the front here, you can see this is what's left of a septic tank that the top floated away, and it's completely filled with sand. And you can't really see it in the picture, but there's a well on the other side of just under this deck over here. So soon after a flood is over, a pretty devastating flood like this, people are going to be asking questions about what do they do with the septic tank? Is the well safe to drink from anymore? Can they rebuild the septic tank, and where can they rebuild it? So it's usually not long after the flood waters are gone or the fire's out that we really become a big part of the emergency response. Again, a flood picture from a flood that we worked on. This one's a slightly different situation where this is clearly there's damage, but these are municipal sewer lines. So these are sewer lines that are connected to a larger system, and you can see they've been washed out and destroyed, but the homes aren't. So this type of situation poses a much different problem, but a equally complex one that people could, in theory, be living in these homes, but there's no sewer system anymore. So how do we provide service to them? Do we shut off water to make sure water isn't entering the river? Or do we provide backup water supplies? It really spurs a lot of questions for us environmental health when these emergencies occur. And then future of water resources, really interesting area of water quality that's recently getting a lot more attention. We know globally the demand for water is increasing, and there's only so much water to go around. So what are some ways to more efficiently use the water we have? The graphic on the bottom right there is from the CDC and kind of highlights how a lot of water reuse is occurring. We're starting to see more direct reuse of wastewater, alternatives for gray water treatment, even industrial uses, how that water can be recaptured and reused for potable drinking water supplies. In Colorado, we recently had our first direct reuse water system get up and running, and it's one of the first regulations of its kind in the United States, although a lot of states are moving this direction where you could take water, and in this case, it's an office building, treat it on site and reuse it within the same building. So really exciting and kind of leading edge areas for water quality. To talk about some of the career paths and areas where environmental health professionals could get involved in water quality, this is a recent headline regarding a water quality issue, and I'm just going to use it to highlight some of the different roles. So trihalomethanes, major source of contamination for drinking water treatment providers. And there's some new research finding that manure runoff from agriculture could be a big contributor or source of trihalomethanes. So when you look at potential solutions for this issue, from the public health side and local public health agency, that might be a water quality professionals looking at inspections to ensure that the handling of that on that agricultural facility is done per the best management practices and preventing runoff in general. And then from a consulting side, It might be an environmental health professional working with a consulting firm to help design better controls on this facility, make sure from the beginning that they're not seeing runoff and contamination. And then from a water treatment side, at the treatment facility, are they able to implement solutions to treat this new source? Is there a modification they need to make to a treatment plant, or changes that they might need to do? And then from the policy and regulation side, looking at are there new policies that could protect this issue from occurring? So are there setback distances that could be applied, and new policies there? Are there regulations for application rates or requiring pretreatment that might help this from becoming an issue? So a lot of different areas. Water quality, I think, is one of those where there are a lot of different angles and a lot of different opportunities for environmental health professionals to be involved. I'm going to close on this slide just to highlight that if you're interested in learning more about water quality and small water and wastewater systems in particular, I'd really recommend looking into a few larger organizations that they highlight water and wastewater treatment. They are great places to learn more. Some of them hold annual conferences, a great spot to network, learn more about the industry. Water quality tends to be pretty local, so areas or issues or concerns in one part of the country might not be the same in other parts of the country. So it's great to plug into your local network and get learn about what's going on and what the hot topic issues are. SORA and NAURA that are listed here are really wastewater focused, great organizations, lots of training, lots of opportunities to network. And then NEHA has the private water network, great new resource for everything private well or on-site wastewater system. And Montana's Water Center, when I first started doing water system inspections, I used a lot of their resources as a training piece, and still a great resource. So that's what I have. My contact info is listed, and I will turn it back over to Nicole.
Awesome presentation, Chris. Thank you so much. So, for the audience that's here with us today, if you have any questions for Chris, please use the Q&A to drop those questions into the box, and we will address them for you. And while I wait for the first question to come in, Chris, what do you find to be most challenging about your role?
Well, I think I alluded to it a little bit. Things change so fast in water quality that it often feels like when you have something figured out, and you feel like that area is good, then something changes. You know, we might have felt like we had a handle on PFAS, and then all of a sudden the 6 ppd thing comes along. So it's always, you know, kind of the next thing that is the issue, and challenging but rewarding at the same time.
Gotcha. Thank you. All right, we received a first question from Sarah. She said, Chris, what program did you graduate from at Colorado State?
I was in the environmental health program, which I think has changed, at least in terminology, a little bit. But that was my degree, was environmental health.
Wonderful. And she said, undergrad or grad?
Undergrad.
Thank you. Any other questions for Chris? Oh, yes, now they're rolling in. All right, Chris from Ida, has any of your studies impacted policy changes at a legislative level?
Oh, that's a great question. My best answer is yes, at least a little bit. A lot of the policies and regulations, at least at the state level, do do originate with the legislature, and sometimes it's an issue that somebody's working on. They often approach local public health or experts in the area to get some idea on what they need to incorporate into those pieces of legislation. So I've had the opportunity to work with legislators in the past and had, some of those pieces implemented into bills, which is fun and a little bit terrifying at the same time. So
But rewarding, I'm sure.
exactly. Yep.
Wonderful. We have another question from Sarah. Can someone get a master's in hydrology to work in your field?
Ooh, I don't know if there's a program like that, but hydrology as a background would definitely assist you in the field. That would be kind of a core base that would definitely assist you in water quality.
Yes. I was going to add there's a good handful of hydrologists that are part of the private water network that Chris mentioned. Another question for you is from Brandon. What type of skills or factors would be helpful to get your foot into becoming a water quality specialist?
Yeah, I think from a skill standpoint, um, the thing that assists you the most is that problem solving skill. So the ability to take a new issue and kind of quickly come up with a series of solutions to it and a path that might get resolution. And one of the ways to do that is really that plugging into local and regional conditions, really getting a good base of knowledge of what are the areas of concern in that region or that area that you could potentially be working in. That really gets you that jump on. You kind of know the issues, you know the problems, and it helps you get that much ahead on figuring out resolutions to those.
Great, thank you. And one more question for you, Chris. In Colorado, do you need any extra state licensing to work in environmental health?
You don't.
And there you go. Oh, one more. Last question for Chris. So we'll move on to panelists. From Ida, does today's technology monitor water quality that provides data of the impact of these new chemicals entering our water systems?
Yeah, that's a really good question. In general, no. Some of these things are being researched and discovered so quickly that the monitoring technology hasn't caught up. So in most cases, um, when we're doing monitoring for some of these new emerging contaminants, it's got to be collected in the field and sent to a lab, and there's typically very few labs, at least initially, that are able to sample for these things, and that capacity builds, as time goes on. But something like 6 ppd, the choices for how you can get water analyzed are really, there's not very many right now, and that'll grow over time. But yeah, these things happen so fast that the monitoring technology is lags behind.
Great. But thank you, Chris, very much. And we will continue on. I will bring up my screen. All right. Did my screen come up for you guys?
Yes.
Wonderful. All right. So please allow me to introduce today's expert panelists. Emily Bourdon has been working in the environmental health program at the Virginia Department of Health for about 15 years. Her journey into environmental health has been somewhat unconventional. She began her career as a 4-H extension agent before transitioning to the role of environmental health specialist at the Virginia Department of Health. Throughout her career, she has worked in various areas of environmental health, including food safety, inspecting migrant labor camps, and reviewing and issuing well and septic construction permits. Currently, Emily serves as the Environmental Health Supervisor in the Well and On-Site Sewage Program. Her primary focus is in the rural areas where she assists property owners and private wells and on-site sewage systems. Our second panelist today is Kelly Amador, who is an environmental health officer for the Black Hawk County Public Health Department in Iowa. She started as an installer of on-site wastewater treatment systems or septic systems at the age of 15. She attended Iowa State University and received a bachelor's in animal science with a minor in environmental science. After graduation, Kelly continued working in the family business as a certified installer of on-site wastewater treatment systems. She did plumbing, HVAC, electrical, and well pump installations. Kelly is also a certified pool operator, lead inspector, and risk assessor, and is a registered environmental health specialist or sanitarian. In 2019, she took her role as an environmental health officer. Her current profession includes inspecting on-site wastewater treatment systems, water testing, public pool inspections, lead inspections, and a variety of other environmental health duties. So thank you both for being here. I am going to take down my screen and pass it over to Emily. Emily, will you please share your story of a day in the life of a water quality specialist?
Okay, well, thank y'all for having me. It's a pleasure. Yes, so as Nicole was saying, I probably had a more unconventional way of getting into the environmental health field. In fact, I had a Bachelor of Arts degree, but an opportunity came right out of college where I became a 4-H extension agent, and and that gave me a lot of skills as far as community outreach, building uh, really good relationships within our communities. But then in 2006, I became an environmental health specialist with Virginia Department of Health. And that's when I'll back up. When I was a 4-H agent, I did get my master's in agriculture education through Virginia Tech. And then when I did leave, become an environmental health specialist, it's been mostly on the job training and taking some classes. I took some soil science classes from North Carolina State University, because what we basically do, I'm mostly in a rural setting, as Nicole was talking about, and we review and process well and septic applications. For example, new construction, or if you run out of, most everyone's on a well in our area, private well. And if your well runs dry or you're having issues, you're going to need a new well. So that's when we come into play. In the state of Virginia, the soil evaluations and design has gone to the private sector. So we're reviewing the applications, we're reviewing paper applications, and we do audit they're called on-site soil evaluators, basically soil scientists. And we go out in the field and evaluate their work and look at the soils. As I mentioned, we've had some droughts in the past, especially in 2023. We had to replace quite a few wells in our area. There were still people on springs, and those springs were drying up. But we also do, other environmental health with the rabies program, and complaints. We investigate complaints. That's a big component of our job. So, and basically, we are permitting. We have two roles. We're permitting and we have enforcement. But in reality, with our communities, we're more educators when it comes down to it. And helping, as Chris was mentioning, problem solving is huge because all kinds of problems come our way. And what we do is we try to think out of the box. We work with other community agencies and partners. Well drillers, they're huge. They were a huge asset to our program, and that's we learn a lot from well drillers, and it's good community relations with them. So we're from new well construction. We go from new well construction to, we witness grouts to make sure that those are done properly. We inspect a well prior to it going into use for that new homeowner, or, if it's a replacement. We're really seeing the effects of climate change and environmental health, at least in our area. Seems like we're having more drier trends. And the well drillers reports that we're getting, they're having to go deeper and deeper into the water table. Yeah, that might be, more population too, might have its effect. People reach out to us, property owners, when they're having issues with their water supply. So we try to work together to figure out, what's going on. One example of another community partner, I remember I worked for Virginia Cooperative Extension. It's part of Virginia Tech. That's one of our land grant universities. And they have a really good program. It's the Virginia Household Quality Program, where a property owner, if they want to get their well tested, from bacterial or any chemicals, it's a really good deal. It's really cheap to do. And they send it off to the lab, and that could get really expensive if you went to a private lab. And speaking of labs, we work with a lot of private labs. We don't do testing anymore. It's gone to the private sector. And just, as I mentioned, we are a rural area. It's probably 60 to 90% that are on those private wells. As I mentioned, all kinds of issues do come about. Sometimes we do see that, and we're hearing the term environmental inequities. We do see that sometimes. I have an example. A low income neighborhood was on a public well, but it's not regulated anymore because a family moved away. But they ran all the houses, they weren't getting any water. And this particular well was on someone's property. There was no easement. So there were a bunch of issues, some fighting within the neighborhood when it was working, because you're charging people rent. So it can be very problematic sometimes with folks. But what we did is we worked together with other county agencies, well drillers, private labs, to see what we could come up with and some solutions. Virginia Department of Health had some grant money from that infrastructure bill. And we were able to get quite a few of those folks on wells. And it was a challenging experience. But it was great that some of those folks get their own private well. And then the people that had the well, it was a leak. So it was a leak. They got some piping somehow. It was above ground. So we're like, nah, I think you're going to have to get that underground here. But there was one of those things, some of those families went with 1 year without having any water. And I can tell you, there were some, most of our population wouldn't handle that very well. So that was an interesting experience. But environmental health it's a lot of fun and challenging. The nice thing, every day is different. So it's never boring, to say the least. So that's about what I have. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Emily. And I will pass it over to Kelly Amador.
All right, my name is Kelly. I work for the local public health department in Blacktop County, Iowa. I started off as an installer and then became an environmental health officer for the health department. So I have a little bit of a different background. As a contractor, that switched over into a regulator. My main duties at the health department are private sewage treatment system regulations. So that's probably about of my job. And so I go out on site evals and inspect final septic systems. During my site evals, we'll do I will require 6-foot test hole because in Iowa you have to have 3 foot of soil separation before you hit groundwater from the bottom of your leach field to the groundwater table. So we're looking at groundwater tables, we're looking at bedrock, and then we're making sure that these systems are at least 100 foot from the well. We also again have to make sure there's a whole table of distance requirements that septic systems have to meet. So that's part of our site evaluation, and then I go in and inspect the system after it's installed for a final inspection. Then we also have in Iowa, we're very, very fortunate to have what is called a Iowa Private Well Grant Program, and this program covers free water testing for well owners who live in the county. And we'll go out there and perform well testing on these wells. We'll cover nitrate, coliform bacteria, E. coli, arsenic, and manganese. So we sample, collect, and get the results for those water tests. And then we do well regulations. So we're doing site evals for regulations for well permitting and everything Emily does. And then I'm also a certified pool operator. And so we kind of talk about drinking water a lot, but I also inspect all public pools and make sure that people swimming in the water and has safe water to swim in, safe facilities to swim in. So those are 3 of my duties. I have many, many more. They say all duties is assigned, and you just kind of every day is changing. You really need to be kind of flexible. You might have something scheduled for the day, and then you get a phone call and everything changes, and you're out and about. So that's kind of what I do.
Awesome. Thank you, Kelly, for sharing. So we're going to open up a discussion and take some Q&A from the audience. So if you have any questions, please go ahead and use the Q&A option on your Zoom to drop those questions in for us, and we will address them. Kelly, I'm actually dying to ask you a question. Starting when you were at the age of 15 doing installations, how has that benefited you in your career? I mean, just the knowledge, the experience. Tell us about that.
So, I mean, my father owns a plumbing HVAC company, excavations. He put in private septic systems. And I remember sitting at home one summer and he came home and he said, I need your help. You're coming to work for me. So really getting in the dirt and installing the systems and then learning kind of what you have to do. Like I was doing perk tests on after school, doing perk tests while doing my homework. So you have to pull water in a hole, wait 30 minutes and measure it. Well, the 30 minutes I was waiting, I remember doing calculus homework. So I kind of got thrown into, I know what to expect. I remember having sanitarians that I looked up to in the counties that we installed with. You kind of understand what the expectations are. You start learning like what the regulations are, what the rules are. And as a contractor, you don't really necessarily understand most of the importance of why we have to do this. It's mostly, I hear a lot of complaining about why do I have to do this? And then as a regulator, you kind of understand this is why we have to do this. So it really kind of set up where I am today. Just, I understand the contractors. You also kind of learn when they're trying to pull the wool over your eyes and try to get away with something, because you're like, yeah, I know how this is. And so I've really kind of proven myself in the contract world, where you can't get away with anything because I kind of know what you're trying to do. Don't hide.
That's great. Thank you for that. Just a reminder for all of you with us today, if you have any questions for Kelly, Emily, or Chris, please go ahead and drop those into the Q&A. And I'll pose a question to any three of you. What role in water quality do you think is in like highest demand right now? Like, what are your agencies looking for? Someone that specializes in what in regards to water quality?
I'll be really honest, Nicole. If you could be more diverse and you're willing to be a diverse person, where you're might not only focus on water quality or water testing, but you're willing to do like pool inspections, or you're willing to do something else in water quality. That's kind of the career choices where the environmental health officer in my aspect. So I see a shortage in other counties with food inspectors. And so you might not actually start out as water quality, but you might get into it, kind of like what Emily did.
Gotcha.
Nicole, I would just say I agree with yeah, totally what Kelly said. And then, you know, in environmental health, generally speaking, a science background is very helpful. You know, because, you know, water quality is pretty, you know, narrow. Not everybody has that experience, but I think if you have that science generally background, that's going to help you in the environmental health field. Of course, if you had an environmental health degree, or, you know, with the water quality, natural resources, something like that, of course, that would be great. But I think generally speaking, that science background will definitely help that person.
Okay, great. We have a question for you all from Brandon. He is wondering how much traveling is needed in your roles.
So it depends on the day. It depends how many septic system, you know, it depends on how big county you are, how many systems are going to be installing. In the summer months, I'm very busy. I'm hardly ever in my office. I say my car is my work office, and I can be in my car for like 8 hours a day, just out doing job site to job site, job site. In the winter months, I'm not traveling as much. I They keep track of my mileage, and I am the third highest person in the health department of 55 people on miles that I put on my car. Probably about 10,000 to 11,000 miles a year.
Wow. All right, Emily or Chris?
I would just say, totally, Kelly. Yes, you're in your car a lot. Especially because we are so short staffed. I don't think that's new. I think a lot of health departments, health districts are so short staffed that we have to cover more ground. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think it used to be, we used to use it as a selling tool though, because it was kind of the undiscovered piece of you got to learn the county and you got to go everywhere, and it's a lot of windshield time, but some of it is a lot of fun.
Cool.
I don't mind traveling in my car. I don't mind spending time, especially when it's nice out. You have the windows down, you can turn the radio up. No, everything's hands-free. I always get the new car because they don't want to come and get me if it breaks down. So there's benefits of working in their car, I think.
Very nice. All right. I'll pose this question, you guys. What advice would you give to students who are thinking about a career in water?
My best advice is, I think I mentioned it earlier, is water quality is tends to be really regional and somewhat local. And so if you're considering a career in water quality in a particular area, get to know the area and learn what the issues are, because they aren't the same everywhere, and different areas of the country are dealing with different issues. So that really gets you, it gives you that much of a leg up, if you really understand the issues, and if you're plugged into the local watershed groups or the local conferences or regional conferences or networking events, that really helps.
Right, thank you.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, if you have, opportunities, whether it's like internship or, just starting out, if you can get a range of experience, maybe work at a lab, with water testing, or some type of environmental group, or a well driller, Kelly has the advantage of, knowing how the business side of installers and what that is like. And that's an amazing experience that will help you, in your role.
I would say get to know your state laws and get to know your local laws. A lot of my job is reading laws and code and interpreting and then enforcing that. So know what your laws are. Which isn't very exciting, to be honest, but it's necessary. Maybe if you also get a hold of your local health departments or state department and see if they have internships. Unfortunately, a lot of the internships are not always paid for. They don't pay you, but if you can get in foot in the door with an intern, we have 2 food inspectors that were interns here before they were hired. So internships, I think are really, really important.
In my experience working with NEHA's private water and decentralized wastewater committee and with the private water network, in comparison to the other field projects that I have and work on, that the people that work in water are very passionate about the work that they do. And can you guys explain what it is that drives you in this field? Because it's got to be something. Because I have to say I've noticed that.
I think in my opinion, you develop some real one-on-one connections with people when you're helping them with an issue with a well, or if you're helping them repair a septic system. Not that you don't in some of the other fields, but it's really kind of a personal connection, and you get to know somebody and help them through a situation. I think it does make you really want to do this. When you get the bug, I think it sticks with you.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I agree with Chris. Just enjoying working with people, all kinds of different people. Like I said, it's never dull. And yeah, it's just, if you can make that different, everyone wants clean water and clean rivers and streams. And, if you can make that impact and really educate folks how important it really is to all of us. So it's fun.
I think Emily's right. I mean, a lot of my role is education I try to teach them the importance of water quality. Iowa, we have really high cancer rates. We're trying to figure out where our cancer is coming from. And for me, what drives me is if I can say, okay, I got one system that was discharging the ditch, now to have a really legal system where we're protecting that water from human waste. It feels like an accomplishment. It feels like I'm a goal. And Emma's absolutely right. I spend a lot of time educating contractors, educating homeowners, educating realtors, and talking about the importance. And then you just kind of get passionate and you can't give up because you're going to have the bad ones that yell at you, that don't want to follow the rules. And it's going to ruin your day. But you try to think of the ones that, the good stories and the good that you have though.
The work he does makes a difference, whether it's just at someone's home or in your community or in your county, your state. I think that's what I get from you guys. You guys make a difference. Yeah. We have another question from Brandon. I know some professions here outsource their lab work to the private sector. How much lab work is there in everybody's field? Brandon, are you asking like how much testing they're doing on water? I just want to clarify.
So when I'm doing water quality samples or water testing samples, we're collecting the samples and then we're taking it to a lab. So our department doesn't have the equipment to test the water ourselves. We're outsourcing all of our water testing. So we don't really do lab work. We just collect the samples for the labs.
Gotcha.
Yeah, everyone, property owners, when they need to test their water, they have to go to a private lab. The health department in Virginia used to we used to collect the samples and send it off, but now it's all gone to the private sector and we're just looking at the results.
Gotcha. All right. Well, thank you all. I'm going to pull up my slide deck, and Adrian would like to address all the students that are with us today.
Awesome. Thanks, Nicole. My name's Adrian Gothard. I'm a program analyst here at NEHA, and my role is to support NEHA's student members and all of our student and early career development initiatives. So NEHA has always had a focus on supporting the development of environmental and public health students that are seeking to enter our workforce. As we know that there's an estimated 40% of the environmental public health workforce that plan to leave their jobs in the next few years. So we really want to provide opportunities and resources to build you all up so that you can fill those roles. So our focus on students includes academic scholarships for graduate and undergraduate students, and we gave out more than $18,000 last year. We have a student research competition. We, of course, do our campus grand rounds that offer you the opportunity to engage directly with experts in the fields like we did here today. And we actually have another campus grand round coming up next week. I'll drop the chat in the link here so you can register for that. We also provide mentorship opportunities and access to our community of over 7,500 NEHA members. We do career building and professional development resources. And currently we have we are offering a free 12-month NEHA membership for students if you join by October 1st of this year. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'll drop my information here in the chat, and you can find out more about all of our student initiatives on our webpage, which I will also add. Thanks, Nicole.
Awesome. Thank you, Adrian. All right. Well, we would like to give a big thank you to our guest speaker, Chris Manley, and our panel experts, Emily Bourdon and Kelly Amador. Thank you so much for being here with us today and sharing your expertise in the field. I hope all of you gained new insight into the field of water quality. We have one final request of each of you who joined us, that you just take 5 minutes to provide us your feedback on today's seminar by completing our short evaluation survey. Your feedback is valued and assists us in being able to better meet your needs in future seminars. It would be greatly appreciated. You will receive the link following the close of the seminar. So thank you again, and wishing you all a wonderful rest of your day. Goodbye.